Breaking news right now, a senior defense official saying the U.S. might send more troops to Europe as Russian forces are being stalled by Ukraine. The Russian soldiers have halted outside of the capital city of Kyiv. Reportedly, they're in bad shape, reportedly suffering from frostbite, along with food and fuel shortages. They are unable to continue Putin's invasion against Ukraine's defenses. And then Ukraine President Zelensky calling out NATO, claiming the allied nations are too afraid of Putin to do anything. Zelensky also saying he will pull Ukraine's NATO bid to stop Putin's war and continue peace talks. Now, all of this as oil is hanging around $109 a barrel right now. The European Union has not reached a unanimous decision on whether or not to ban Russian energy. That would be oil and natural gas. Poland and the Baltic states all leading the calls for an oil ban as the EU continues to mull over a decision. I want to bring in, for a Fox Business exclusive, international security and energy policy expert in Russia, Eurasia, and the Middle East, Atlantic Council Eurasia Center senior fellow, Dr. Ariel Cohen. It is great to have you here, sir, and so many questions to get to.
It's a pleasure.
Yeah, thank you. But I first want to start with how likely it would be. We do know that we're expecting some type of announcement on sanctions, joint sanctions, when NATO convenes. That will be later this week. That's tomorrow or Thursday. But how likely do you think it would be that Europe would actually pull the plug on Putin? Because this is the funding. This is how he's funding the war.
Absolutely. Russia is earning $9 billion, that's billion with a B, dollars every day from European purchases of oil and gas from Russia. This is the biggest moneymaker for Putin. This is what's fueling his war machine. And the fact that they don't do it and they won't do it in the nearest future is totally self-imposed. We were telling the Europeans for years that their energy policy, especially Germany's energy policy, that was focusing on green energy, on renewables, to the exclusion of everything else, to the exclusion of natural gas, of nuclear, of shale. That is a self-defeating proposition. And they didn't listen. They didn't want to hear it. And then on top of that, when the Biden administration just got into the White House, day one, they banned further drilling on federal lands and in the coastal waters of the United States, cutting our production, our ability to provide that oil and gas, liquefied natural gas, for Europe. So Europe has the primary responsibility, and the Biden administration has a secondary responsibility for the fact that we are now paying every day $9 billion for the Putin war machine. Yeah,
because really, if correct me if I'm wrong, he's got about a month or so of reserves left still, financial reserves, before really the true...
No, much more.
Much more than that? How much more?
Much more. Okay, so Russia was planning this war for about 20 years. This is not something that came as a bolt out of the sky. I published a piece in The Hill on the 6th of January, basically saying this is what they're going to do. And in order to protect himself, he was amassing a huge amount of currency reserves and gold, $600 billion. Out of that 600, about a half is now frozen in the Western banks. And one day probably will be applied to compensate Ukraine for all the horrible destruction we're witnessing in Kharkiv, Mariupol, and other cities I remember from my childhood.
Well, you know, I follow the money. Dr. Cohen,
$300 billion. It's a lot of money.
It is. Look, I'm a person that I follow the money. That's what we do on Fox Business. And, you know, ECB President Christine Lagarde just came out just a few moments ago and said that she believes that the Russians are using cryptocurrency as a way of funding operations to continue and evade sanctions. So that's one thing I wanted to get out there. But really quick, I want to ask you, since you're an energy expert, about the nuclear side of this. We know that they've got Chernobyl. They just let those workers out after 3 weeks of holding them hostage, but keeping operations at Chernobyl going. There is still concern about Putin and his nuclear capabilities. If he gets desperate enough, would he make some type of move? What are your thoughts?
Number one, there are now fires around Chernobyl in the areas that are polluted with radioactivity. So imagine these forests going up and spewing radioactive junk. So this is how apocalyptical that is. This is really the last days kind of picture. I hope it's not the last days, but looks horrible. Secondly, you're asking the $64 trillion question. Putin has weapons of mass destruction. He has nuclear, EMP, chemical, bacteriological, and in the Russian military doctrine, they say we will escalate to de-escalate. If he is, as he called it himself, a cornered rat, there is a possibility he will use tactical nukes, or God forbid, EMP or strategic nukes, and then we're in a whole new ballgame.
What does NATO do?
Well, NATO right now is doing its best to stay out of the fight, and I think we're doing that correctly.
Scary.
We do not need a war with Russia where Russia will feel cornered and use nukes.
All right.
So here we go.
Dr. Cohen, wow, great to have you on here. Thank you so much, sir.
Thank you for watching. Please subscribe to get more content like this.